Live. It's
Tuesday afternoon.
in Avon, Indiana. Okay, we are going to go ahead and call to order at 3 o'clock. If you could please stand for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, both Steve and I are present, so we do have establishment of a quorum. And we will go ahead and approve. Do you have any changes or comments to the consent agenda from last week?
I do not. Therefore, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. The consent agenda is approved. We will go ahead and open the floor to public comment. Does anyone have a public comment? Okay, let's leave that open for a minute. This is where we need our music. Okay, there is no public comment. We will go ahead and close that at 3:02 p.m. And I will turn it over to Steve for your liaison report.
Okay, for the, as I'm the liaison for the Avon Town Council.
Okay.
2 meetings since we last met. At their October 21st meeting, they had a final reading on the RISE commercial development and on Brookstone PUD, which has been, both of those have been approved and they're moving forward with those. As a business person, I'm particularly happy with the RISE because that will grow more businesses in our community. So I think that's a great thing that we have. November 4th meeting, they had some letter of intent approvals for Avon Landing and Avon Logistics that they approved. The rest of it was the November 4th meeting was a shorter one of their. Normally they're 2 in the month, so that will be, I imagine, longer in the next meeting. So,
Okay. And as the school board liaison, I did not get to attend the school board meeting last night, and I will get more information tomorrow night at my AEF board meeting, specifically from Dr. Wyndham. But I do know that the big communication last night was changes to the mask policies in the schools. There is a chart that will make your head spin, but if you can reference that, and getting some nods back there from Stephanie, you can reference that on the school website. What I know as of right now, because of the color that the county is in, I know that 7th, 8th high school and those in the preschool, masks are now optional. So those kiddos had the option today to wear masks or not. The elementary schools, they are still, they have to wear them. They're required at this time. And I believe that will stay in place until the vaccine has been available for 5 to 11-year-olds for 3 months. So I know that they'll be revisiting that as they go along. The other big news I know from the school board last night, without specifics, I know that the teachers across the board all got raises. So that's wonderful for them. But I'll have more specific information at next month's meeting once I get to talk to Dr. Wyndham. All right, department reports, township assistants.
Alrighty, so for the month of October, we did see an influx of individuals seeking assistance. We had 21 interviews conducted last month with a total amount pledged of $3,454.75. The majority of that was between rent and electricity. Already for the month of November, we have had 11 interviews.
Wow.
So definitely seeing an influx, and a lot of this month already has been like for utility assistance. So I believe that that is a trend that we will continue to see. The energy assistance program just opened up 4 applications as of November 1st. So definitely like referring applicants to that, but that also does take some time. So making sure that those on disconnect are being able to be served by us.
Great.
Any questions about my report?
None from me. Nope. Thank you. All right, human resources.
But should be back
Where'd
in
she
here.
go?
Human resources.
Human resources.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm excited to announce that we have a new human resources director. Her name is Ashley Blackwood. Ashley.
Welcome.
Yay. We completed open enrollment with 100% turn-in rate, and we're going to be onboarding 2 paramedics next month. And we have job descriptions ready or in the almost final phase so that you can see them next month for all of the aquatics positions as well as the EDO spot for the fire. You guys got anything else? No. Okay. So yeah, human resources rolling right along and not my responsibility anymore.
Love it. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you.
All right, community engagement, Karen.
Basically, the main thing that I've been working on since the last meeting is doing some major updates to the park's website with everything that we're doing, and Hawk Park opening and Murphy Park coming soon. It's definitely going to be driving a lot of traffic to that website. So we're just trying to kind of give it a facelift, make it a little bit more user friendly and able for the community to kind of find out about everything awesome that we're doing. So we've been doing that and working on the casino Christmas party for all the township staff and employees. We've got some major great sponsorships and looking forward to a good event. And then also kind of working on another event in April. It's in the very beginning stages, but kind of a community-wide, township-wide Easter egg extravaganza type of thing. So that's just coming in the future.
Love it.
Any questions?
None from me. No.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Parks and Rec.
We're ready.
All right, we're excited.
Okay, we opened our 5th park today, the Pock Park. It was a great grand opening. We're very excited about it. I just wanted to give some special recognition to our maintenance staff. They're often our unsung heroes of the Parks Department. And they worked very hard to make sure we could open on time. And they even built the grand opening signage for us. You can see that we have reached our revenue goal now. And so we are also opening the ice rink. We have several rentals coming up for our igloos. The birthday parties are always a big draw for our ice rink. Do you guys have any questions?
I don't. Yeah. Steve?
Nope.
All right, thank you.
Great work. Congrats on the new park.
Thank you.
All right, fire.
Good afternoon. In my report, I mentioned that last month the Civilian Fire Safety Board approved our promotional process for our chauffeurs, and after they approved that, Ray Mulvihill, one of our firefighter paramedics, was promoted. He was number 1 on the list, so he was promoted to chauffeur, and he started his new position, I think it was beginning last week. 2 shifts ago. Yeah. I mentioned in a report that we were in the process of doing our combined hiring process with Brownsburg, and Pittsburgh, we had about 140 people that turned in applications. I think about 120 of those showed up for the ladder climb. We had one person that didn't pass the ladder climb, but Saturday we had the written test. We had a 9 o'clock test and a 1 o'clock test, and we had 111 people that went through the written exam. So we've now compiled those scores. The next component of the hiring process will be the oral interviews, and they take place toward the end of the month. And then after those are done, we'll take a list to the board, the merit board, in January for them to approve that list for us to hire for. So one of the departures that we've kind of made from that list is that in the past, we've a lot of times taken the top candidates and then gone from the top down. I think we've learned from that that sometimes that's not the best option, because even though somebody can score well on a test doesn't mean that they're the caliber of person that we want. So we're really trying a little harder to make sure that we're hiring people that are good character, good moral character, and then it's pretty easy to teach them to be a firefighter. Easy in the fact it takes 6 months, but still, it's easier to get a good person than teach them to be a firefighter. So we're working on that. A few weeks ago, Chief Allen extended offers to 2 civilian paramedics that will be starting
December 6th.
December 6th. They'll have a 2-week orientation before they hit the road. At the same time, we did offer a lateral transfer. We extended an offer to that person. They declined the offer after we offered it to them. So we now still have, I think, three openings that we're going to need to fill first of the year, and we could have another 1 or 2.
Is there anything you can share with us why the lateral decided not to?
So I
does that
think
get into too much personal information?
Yeah, I'm speculating, but I think a lot of times these guys do it kind of as an ego boost, just to see if somebody else would hire them. I think sometimes we get individuals that are disenfranchised, so to speak, with our organization. I'm not really sure that's the kind of people we want. Anyway, that sometimes you can't fetter that out. Sometimes these guys do it, and I don't think they tell their spouses. So then after they get the offer, then they have to go home and tell their wife, hey, I've got an offer to go to India. And I think this guy was,
so this particular situation, this guy was down at Morgan County, or I'm sorry, Monroe County Fire District, brand new fire territory. He had come over from Bloomington, and what I believe happened is he turned in his resignation letter and then they promoted him. So he is now in charge of all their recruit training.
So it's nothing that we could have done.
I don't really think it's anything that we did wrong, and I don't get that impression from any of the laterals that we've extended offers.
Well, we've been so successful with some of the others.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure, and
Yeah,
that's fine.
and I think the other thing that, I think what I've learned is, to be honest with you, I think I would almost rather have a brand new recruit with no training, because we've built such a good recruit program, and I don't say that because of me, I say that because of our people that are doing it, but we've got such a great, in fact, I've had a couple of other chiefs that have contacted me about sending our people next year to their recruit academy, and I'm kind of like, yeah, probably not. I'm probably going to do it in-house, just because we know what we're going to get. We know the quality of the education that they're getting when we put them through ourselves. So I almost feel like, and I think Jason would even agree, that with a lot of the heartache and time that we've spent doing interviews and trying to do the laterals, it's really almost been unproductive to some degree. We've got 1 or 2 good ones, but I think we've got more that have turned them down than we have people that have accepted them. So,
And we're producing very quality firefighters.
Right.
Program.
and if you've only got one person, obviously it doesn't make sense to do a recruit class for one person. But if you got 3 or 4, and we've got 3 or 4 other departments that have contacted us that know the caliber of our program, that have asked us next year to do another program for our people and theirs. So I don't think we're going to have a hard time next year turning around and doing another class. And hopefully by then we'll have our facility completed and we'll be able to do everything we need to do right here. So
Great.
I put in my report that Chief Schaefer did a building construction symposium. I think this is his 3rd or 4th year to do that. He sends that out all over the state. We actually had some guys from Tennessee that came to the symposium, so we even get people from outside the state to come to that symposium. And he had 4 instructors from outside the state that came in and instructed for those 3 days. Put in my report that the attorney and I are hammering out final nuances to our contract with our builder for the training tower. We had some concerns with their payment schedule and a couple of other things. So with Jeff's input, I've sent that back to our contractor. He's in the process of redoing that, figuring out a draw schedule. And then once we get all that done, we should be good to move forward with that. And then we're kind of building a secondary, smaller training prop too. And Jason, where he works at Fire Department Training Network in Shelbyville, the guys he works with there, they build a lot of their own props. So they're actually going to come over and help us build a smaller prop that we're putting there on the training ground too. But if you go by right now, they're out there pouring some concrete. We've got to get pad poured, and then we have to get some corner pylons poured for the training prop. So they're actually prepping that yesterday and today, and they'll be pouring that Friday in anticipation of them starting in January. Well, probably in the next month on the smaller prop, but then in January on the bigger tower.
So you're pretty confident April 2022?
Yeah, that's kind of what they've told us is that if we get the contract signed, the contract they sent started January 3rd and runs through some date in April. So if we get that done by that date, by the time we start, I think the original talks we've talked is that our next recruit class will probably start in March.
The fire school start in May.
Yeah, because the first 6-8 weeks is EMS, so we've got a little bit of lag time. So really, as long as they get it done by 1st of May or so, we should be in pretty good shape. So I'm pretty confident, even if they run behind a little bit, hopefully by then they'll be done on our next recruit class. Like I said, we'll be able to do it all right there.
Great.
The last thing I want to mention was I'm going to ask two of our ladies to come forward. Courtney.
You guys
Julia.
step up past the wall.
Just move up even
Pass the
with the
trash
trash
can.
can. That way
You're
you
not on the video?
Yeah. So I put in my report, and I actually looked up the date, but on October 22nd, Courtney and Julia had gone to pick up some supplies for their computers, and while they were in Best Buy, Courtney noticed the gentleman that was having some distress, and she looked over, and he actually went into cardiac arrest. So Courtney has been trained recently in doing CPR classes. She's been a little bit hesitant to do those because she needed to build a little confidence. So Courtney got the opportunity to do it firsthand, not just as a teacher, but as somebody that actually does it. Ted and I have both been on many runs when we've had cardiac arrest, and teaching it and learning it's one thing, but actually doing it is a whole different story. So I think these two ladies obviously gave the gentleman a lot better chance of surviving. I don't know that we've done any follow-up, and sometimes we don't get any. Okay, I'll let Ted's nodding. I'll let you.
He is alive and well. They couldn't figure out why he went into cardiac arrest, but they saved his life.
Nice.
So and the life-saving certificate. Congrats.
Thank you.
Good job.
So awesome.
Here, get over there.
Where are we going?
Right here.
Okay.
That's it. What do we do? You're doing it. Everyone else has their arms around. All right, 1, 2, 3. Just in case. Perfect. Yep.
Good.
We're good? Yeah.
Good job.
Thanks.
Okay. I'm trying not to cry. Nice job. All right, Don, trustee report.
Okay, you have my regular report. Just a couple of things to highlight. First of all, the State Board of Accounts does audits of taxing entities. Our audit came up, well, actually, we were notified last week. And they came in and met with Board Chairman Summers and Deputy Trustee Woodard and I last Thursday and did the entrance exam meeting, went over the process and everything. They told us that their desire is to be finished before December 1. And then they'll have an exit interview with the three of us again. And once those are done and they do some other things, then they'll post it on Gateway. It'll be open to the public to see the results. It's for 2019 and 2020. After that, we will go to annual audits. And the reason for that is because of the bond amounts that we have. S&P does ratings and they have to have review of that. So they require annual audits. So State Board of Accounts is the one that does that. So they'll be here once a year after that. So I just wanted to let you know. And once we get notified that they're finished, we'll let you know. Karen mentioned the Township Employee Christmas Party, Casino Party. It'll be December the 10th. It'll be from 6 to 9:30 at the Park Pavilion. Obviously, you and a guest are invited. This is a event we have for our full-time and full part-time people. We don't do it for seasonal, but the rest of the group. At that time, we also introduce or announce our Township Employee of the Year. This will be our 4th year of doing that. These are folks that are nominated by their peers. They send the nomination form completed to me. I have a committee chairman known only to me who lives outside Hendricks County. So less a chance of knowing these individuals. I do take their name out of it. That person appoints a committee and they meet and they get back to me with the number that I assign to each of these nominees. They tell me which one won and then we announce it that night. And so there's some award. Cruise One does a one-night stay at JW at Marriott, late checkout, breakfast, $200 gift card to St. Elmo's, et cetera. Their names put on the plaque out here and then they get their own individual plaque too. So quite a high honor and they're nominated by their peers. So that's neat. The last thing just mentioned by Britt, we have a new human resource director. I want to acknowledge Britt for being the interim director during that time, besides her taking care of her accounting job as deputy trustee, et cetera. So appreciate her help in that. And this time, I'd like to do, and I was remiss in doing this with Karen when she was originally appointed, but if Karen Nutley, our community engagement director, would come forward along with Ashley Black, our HR director, and stand out here, I will swear both of you ladies into office. So, and then I have after the meeting, if you want to come up and get me, I've got your appointment forms and then copies of these oaths. I'll need one of them signed, returned back to me so I can have actually put it in the personnel files. So, but the other copy is yours. So if you're ready.
Turn around. That way you're facing the camera. Does that work? There you
The
go.
camera's over there.
Where's the camera? Where's the camera? There we go.
So let me maybe just
There we go.
go over here. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, stating your name,
I, Karen Nutley,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and I will faithfully,
and I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and diligently
and diligently
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of Community Engagement Director,
Community Engagement Director.
Human Resources Director
of Washington Township
of Washington Township
of this county,
county,
according to the law
according to the law
and to the best of my ability.
and to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh. All right, old business, fire training ground update. We did that, didn't we?
Nothing more to
Okay. Station 144 project update. Okay, move up above the trash can. There you go.
So we'll start on the budget for Fire Station 144. We are currently on budget and tracking on schedule for the project as we stand today. We currently have about $183,000 remaining in our owner contingency fund. Now that is, as I said, as of today, we have identified about $20,000 for an unsuitable soils for the parking lot. That will be reflected on this month's pay application from our nation. which will bring that $182,000 down to about $160,000. We've also identified probably a rough order of magnitude of around $20,000 of unsuitable soils for the apron for the apparatus, so going into the apparatus bay. We have not seen that number yet. It's a kind of the same size as the parking lot as we see, so I'm just saying it'll probably be around 20 to 25. We haven't identified that yet, but that is coming up. So if you account for all of those things, we're looking at around 135,000 in our owner contingency in the future, looking at that. So we do have about $55,000 remaining in our construction contingency, which is great. They haven't had to expend some of that to remediate soils for the building pad a few months ago, but other than that, they haven't had to use too much of that contingency fund yet. Chris Cron and I are continuing to purchase FF&E for the project in order to mitigate lead time issues down the road. And then as far as other lead time issues, we have discussed in last month's board meeting, the nail base. So Meyer Nation did have a meeting yesterday with the awning, with the roofing the roofing contractor, and they have identified that November 15th is still the date that they're shooting for. They do have another meeting this week with Horning to identify if that date has changed yet. As we stand right now, November 15th is when that nail base should be released for production. That doesn't state when it's going to be on site yet, so we're still monitoring that as we go. The roof that we do have up right now is a V-Force roof. The V-Force roof, which is technically a 6-month temporary roof. So we do believe that we can do finishes inside the gabled roof areas, which was of concern prior to this. So we do believe we have a route to go down in order to not see a delay. We are yet to confirm that, but that is our belief as we stand right now. As far as schedule goes, Britt, do you mind pulling up the drone shot of 144 if you don't mind? And if you don't mind, I'm gonna hop up here real quick.
Watch the course.
Yep. So this was last week. This has changed a little bit. From about right here back has asphalt binder on it. It did not in that photo, which is great. We are looking at a possible change order. We have not identified it yet in order to put some kind of binder here or finished concrete in order to get into the entry here. We are still working through that number right now, but there may or may not be a change order. We're hoping that there isn't. We are working with that with Meyer Nation. As far as the siding for the building goes, we are putting brick up on the west elevation here of the apparatus bay. They are expected to be complete with brick there by the end of this week, so that should get the masons out of that area. And then we are working on our lap siding and board and batten siding, which is the rest of the facade. They are ongoing with that. They're actually nearly complete with that everywhere except on this east elevation and the north elevation as well. Outside of that, for the schedule wise, I believe that is it for the work that has been commenced. We do have fiber that is terminated at the handhole, which is over here. They are working to get that spliced on into the building, but that was our meeting that we had this morning with Stonewall. So that's that for Station 144. Do you have any questions or comments?
Just so you know, the area he's talking about here on the entrance where the blacktop stops.
Yes.
Tripping on that. But basically, the blacktop starts about here and goes back. So what we have to have is something from here to the road. We checked with the town and we can't get a C of O without a hard surface. So they consider a hard surface either blacktop or concrete. So the thing that Meyer Agent's concerned about is if they go ahead and do a final paving and everything, that with all, one thing that I don't think he talked about is that John Hall is doing the county drainage work across here that we had talked about. They're over here in the corner. They're done now, but they've had to excavate so deep here that part of the concern is that if they go ahead and do that final, that it could settle. So what we don't want to have happen is everything's done. We can't get a C of O because we don't have some hard surface. So that's where we may have to spend some of the owner contingency to take care of that small area to be able to get in and out of there until next spring when we're sure that the settlement's been done and all that.
And there are a few different options on what we could do there. And we're getting pricing for all of those. So whether we do a lean concrete or if we have asphalt come back out and remobilize if the plants stay open longer, that's an option. There are several options that we're getting pricing for. And we're trying to obviously mitigate as much cost as we can out of our owner contingency, but that is currently where we're at as far as coordinating this with the county drainage project.
And if you've seen all the other stuff going on down 900 there, that's Miller Pipeline is putting in gas line down through there in anticipation of the county's project that goes basically from where we terminate on our south property line down to 100. So that's all in anticipation of that. When they did our fiber work, and what the Miller Pipeline's doing is, if you look at the ditch, they're going on the back side of the ditch. And that's where our fiber runs. That's one of the things that we talked to the fiber people about this morning, was our concern that now that all that's in, what happens if, when the county's out there doing their thing, before we actually go live, somebody ends up cutting the fiber or doing something to it. And basically our fiber contractor's liable for that until they go live, and we make sure that we've got a good fiber line, because we were kind of concerned with the county doing that work, and we could end up with a liability with that fiber. So that's covered under their contract until we go live. And if one of the contractors doing that work for the county does hit it, then our contractor will get notified, and it'll be their responsibility to pay for any repairs. So we'll be paying that fiber contractor out. We're gonna retain, I think, about $5,000, give or take. But we're gonna pay out the rest of it, because they've got it, really, other than getting it from the handhole into the inside of the building, everything else is complete.
Did we finalize the doors? Did that
Overhead
situation?
doors, the overhead doors have been leased. The
Okay.
lead time did change from when they were released. It was 22 weeks from the date of release, which still pushed us past our substantial completion date. And we have to have those doors on in order to get a temp CBO.
Right.
They do believe, and they call them weekly, I check in with them, and they do believe that they are able to farm those off another project. They're still working through finding one, but they do believe that they are able to get that from another project.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Murphy Park. Stay in the hot seat.
Staying up. All right, so we will start here with the budget as well. So not a lot has changed since last month's board meeting. We are still about $474,000 over budget if you do include the playground in that number. We do have identified about $383,000 remaining of our $400,000 that we started with in our owner contingency, which is fantastic. We have yet to use really much of that at all, which is great. We have about $184,000 remaining in our construction contingency fund. That $16,000 is basically just overtime in order to get us caught up to date. So we are on track and not on budget. We are on track, on schedule in order to hit that substantial completion date. We have about $90,000 remaining in our unsuitable soils allowance. Now there is a possibility that we need to use some of that at the A cell and D cell lane, which we should have an idea of that D cell lane here within the next few weeks on a proof roll to see if that soil is compacted and suitable. So we should know if we need to use any of that $90,000 here very shortly. We have identified about $138,000 in FF&E savings. Of that $138,000, we do expect to use some of that for owner systems, so access control, IT, security, whatever that may look like, fiber. We have a meeting tomorrow. So we do expect to have a large chunk of that to basically reallocate to our playground funding. But we do feel very comfortable, and we actually have a meeting this Friday to basically kick off that playground, which is incredible. So we are feeling very, very confident about that. Our schedule and progress. So can you pull up the drone for Murphy, if you don't mind? So again, this is about 5 or 6 days outdated, and they have made a ton of progress since, which is incredible. They're moving very quickly out here at Murphy Park. They had the slab poured here for the pool house building right here. All that slab is poured. They actually have hollow metal frames set already, and they're going vertical with the CMU, so they're moving very quickly there. They plan to pour this slab tomorrow for the admin building. As far as the wave pool goes, which you can see right back here, they are installing this radius gutter. It's a stainless steel radius gutter. They actually were finalizing that today, and they'll pour that concrete for the rest of that flooring the end of this week, and those walls as well. So that wave pool concrete slab and wall should be done here by the end of this week, which is incredible. Another thing that we have is that we are working on this upper section of the activity pool area. That is commenced to pour that slab the week of 11/22. That will all be poured on this upper level, except this beach playground area that'll follow the week after. Other activities out here that you can't see it, but there is a sled hill over here. They've actually begun grading that for the playground when that time comes. So they are working on that as well. And then they're working on the decel lane, which is just on 625 East. That concludes the scheduled portion of this update. Do you have anything to add, Laura?
Yes, we're vertical.
We are, we're going vertical on that schoolhouse building, yes.
So Stephanie and I were able to attend the Indiana Park and Recreation Association conference. We attended several sessions where we talked about different pools, what's working. We attended a session with Franklin Parks where they talked about how they jumped their revenue dollars up after COVID. So those were really helpful. We attended AquaCon on Monday, and that was really helpful as well. We actually met with some aquatics facilities in the Noblesville area that we haven't been able to see before, and so it was great to make those connections and those contacts. And then we are meeting with Britt tomorrow to go over that FF&E list so we can start purchasing some of those things, because we have to be a little strategic about how we purchase them, because some of the items are months out before we'll get them. And then we heard back from Brian Bosma, and so we're hoping to hear from him soon about when we can start on our sponsorships and grants.
Fantastic.
David, you want to provide just an honor?
Yeah, I just want to provide an update. So first of all, you mentioned about on schedule and on budget, and you stopped yourself. But the reality is we may be on budget. So we're going to meet Friday with our alternator and the group to talk about the playground, what that means. So the reason we're showing over budget right now is because we've been holding those dollars back in contingency. So we will, if we decide to move forward with that, if we feel comfortable, we can release some of that on our contingency, of course, with talking with Don and Laura, et cetera. And that should bring us in line. So we're gonna have those discussions. The only thing is about the risk as far as if there's any other soil issues or anything when we're doing the acceleration, deceleration lanes, et cetera. The kind of curveball out there that we've been waiting for is DNR. So we've had to put a submittal into DNR. They requested that. They've looked at all the water issues, the flood. They've not found anything that we're out of compliance on. Where they're hung up on is the habitat and environmental side. So it looks like we're going to be required to, I don't know what it's formally called, but it's like a critter walk. It's basically a little walkway within the culvert that has to be constructed to provide a pathway through the culvert from one side to the other. It's actually not uncommon. We find it that they've done this for deer, they've done this over highways, and it's becoming a more prevalent thing for the DNR to do. It's probably it's a real thing. It's looking at the cost of that. I mean, it's probably $5,000 to $6,000 if we were to have our alternative fabricate this or have a group fabricate this. It's probably $5,000 to $6,000, and then with labor on top of that, it's probably somewhere less than $10,000 to put that in. We could probably find a less of an expensive way to do that. So that's the DNR piece. We're gonna have the conversation about the playground on Friday. So hopefully by the time we come back to the next board meeting, we'll have some updates there.
Good.
So I also just wanted to thank you. It's not very often that I have the opportunity to bring guys of this quality on. You're gonna see a lot more of him. I need about 2 more of this guy. But John's been stepping in a big way on these projects. I'm always involved. He keeps me up to date all the time, and I try to pop in where I can with Don and Britt and with Chief back here. So thank you for acceptance of John. He's been great. Yep.
Any questions? No, none. Thank you. Very thorough. Okay, new business.
So the first order of business will be the adoption of your township board meeting calendar for 22. So you need to change that at the top there. I just now noticed that.
Can I be very honest in that I have not looked at this and
Okay.
looked at it against my calendar, because I know last year that we had several issues, and with Shane not being here, can we table this until next month when we have a chance to really, I just want to make sure, because I know we had some issues with scheduling last year and kind of caused problems, so I do.
Definitely December. You need to do that.
Absolutely. So I do apologize for that, but I'll get with that. And would you mind sending this one off to Shane?
Yes.
Okay. And have you gotten his feedback?
Yeah, he's fine.
Oh, well, I'm the only, okay. So I do apologize. I am the only slacker. So I will get on that and get your feedback, and we will approve that in December. Okay, Township observed holidays.
So this is for the 2022 observed holidays. And the only there's a new holiday on there, which is the June 19th holiday, which is now a federal holiday. So that's been added. The rest of the holidays are just like they have been in the last few years. So if you're okay with that, you just need to change the resolution number to an 01 instead of an 02. And then
I have no issues with that. Do
you're
you?
okay with adopting it?
Okay.
I move for the adoption of resolution 110921-01, the 2022 holiday schedule.
I will second. All those in favor?
I
Aye. Motion passes. Okay. And then you have township credit cards under new business
So every year you
presentation.
have to approve a credit card resolution. Townships are allowed by state statute to use credit cards as long as the fiscal body, which is the township board, agrees to that. And there's a resolution that's done. Our township right now has 4 credit cards that we have had historically. 2 that are on the township, for the township use, which is a large balance card with a credit limit of $10,000, a small balance credit card limit with $5,000. Then we have one for fire for a $5,000 credit limit, and then Parks has one for a $5,000 limit. Those cards are under the trustees' control. Each of them, you also establish what's called controllers for each of those cards. In other words, those are the people that can check it out and make sure they check it back in. There's policies that have to be followed. On the fire side, it's been the chief and the deputy chief. On the park, it's been the assistant, the director and assistant director. And on the township side, it's been Courtney Lee, who is our administrative assistant for the fire, and then also our deputy trustee. We have another bank that we've been dealing with on this. And as you know, we bank with TCU, our normal checking account. And they have a plan that I'd like for them to present to you, and you can mull it over and think about it. And then we have some recommendations. And then next month I'll be bringing you the resolution to adopt, because you have to adopt it before we can use it for 2022. So I'd like to introduce Lindsay with TCU, and she can talk about their program and what they're proposing to do if we decide to change.
Thank you.
Yep.
Am I standing in the right spot? I've gathered that so
Up
far.
a little bit further.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. Okay. And it's hard for me not to present to everyone behind me, so sorry for that. I'm Lindsay Wirtz with Teachers Credit Union. We're excited to be a partner to the Township trustee. Our corporate card is a great option. One of the things with any corporate card that you choose is the rewards part of it. We pay 1.5% for every $1 used with the card. Those points then turn into a cash deposit to the actual checking account at Teachers Credit Union. The way that I understand the current card system and the reward system are, those reward points currently are used to purchase different items that the township uses for airline tickets and event expenses. Again, you would have the same options as these funds are directly deposited to the actual checking account. Some of the highlights with the TCU corporate card include what we call our 360 platform. It's an online accessible platform where your different controllers have the ability to go in and adjust card limits if you have a certain event or a new building being built, and you need for that card to have a higher limit for a certain period of time. Your controllers can go online and control those limits and so forth. They can cancel cards, they can order cards. If a card is lost, they have the control of putting a short-term block on the card. Again, the controllers are the admin users for the online 360 platform. They also have the ability to upload receipts. Your receipts are then tagged on the online system for 7 years. So as you're doing your different state board audits and so forth, you will have multiple years of accessibility to different receipts that you've uploaded for different purchases used. I know that is different than the current system that the township is using. There is not this online admin ability, and there is not the ability to upload the receipts. So it might be a way to be more efficient and keep your record system clean. In addition to that, paying online is also an easy, accessible option. Currently, the township writes a check and sends it out to pay the credit card bill. They will have the option now to just do a simple online transfer and funds are posted immediately. There's no delay in the posting time frame. So another good option with the TCU card. In addition to that, there's different reports that will always be available. Again, for different auditing purposes, if you need to pull reports, they go back 7 years. So a lot of highlights to our card. Again, if you're just comparing one corporate card to the next, it really comes down to the accessibility, the ease of the card, and then also the rewards program, which I think we have a good option.
So explain to them that one thing that you talked to Courtney and I about, the overall limit for the township
Thank you.
and how those other cards come into the umbrella. So
Thank you. So the way that our corporate card is set up, there's a limit called the global limit. So for example, if the township voted on and decided that between the 5 cards that you have access with, your global limit could be 50,000. Typical limits for the large balance card is currently 10,000, and the other cards are set at 5. Even though those limits don't equal the global limit, the 50, that's okay. However, when you have the event that you are building a new building or someone has to travel out of town, whatever the case may be, you can increase the card holder up to your global limit. So we would want to take a look at what do we want the global limit to be if you do decide to change. And just know that you may never reach the global limit, but it's better to have the access when you need it. And there's no additional approval process as long as you stay within those global limits.
So as you know, by law, we're not allowed to pay interest. We're not allowed to pay penalties. If we do, then it falls back to us to reimburse the township. The nice thing about even though the people that had the cards would have access, that they would still need to get my approval, as your representative before they could, go raising limits on cards and everything. If we did that $50,000, what she did is recommended one person to be the controller besides me, and I would recommend that be Courtney. And then we would have the four cards and with the controllers that we had before. And I think this would help from the standpoint, because in the past, we could raise limits on certain cards if we need to, as long as we stay within the global limit. If they had a purchase, let's say Laura had a purchase coming up for FF&E, where she used the card, she could we could, with my approval, raise the limit on that card and go ahead and purchase that and then fall back to the other limits that was originally set up. The other thing is too, when we max out the cards, okay, we have to wait till we pay the bill, okay? We've tried in the past where we did mid-month payments and that became kind of squirrely and kind of messed things up. Obviously, then we have the receipts to them. We have to match them up, and we've always enforced that. Her process would actually do that a lot easier, so that we already have them. We'll have them as the cards charge. The receipts will be put into the system, so the controllers will have actually a lot easier going through to make sure that they agree with everything on their statement before I get it to approve. So those are the basic overviews. Again, if you're okay with that, we'll proceed with her help to put together this resolution and have some things outlined. I'll get it to you way ahead of time for input on an individual basis, and you tell me, and then I'll bring it back to the December meeting for a final approval.
Any
Sounds like that
questions?
would work.
Okay, fine.
Thank
We'll
you.
work,
Thank you.
we'll work with Lindsay. Thank you.
All right. Presentation on proposed increase of township fire EMS rates.
So the last time we actually looked at doing anything to our rates was in 2012. Okay, so it's been 9 to 10 years. Fire chief and EMS chief have both, deputy chief over the EMS have decided it's time we need to look at that. So I'll turn it over to them, and they also have our billing company here to answer questions too.
Introduce.
I will.
No.
Okay. So Carmen Friscorn and Brett Driscoll from Medville. If we have questions that we can't answer, that's
You can send it there. Can you,
There you go.
so I tried to send you the information early enough that you could try to digest it a little bit. So let me kind of start from the beginning. Like Don said, it's been several years since we've looked at the rates. I appreciate Sean's comments at the last board meeting, and I don't want you to think that we're out here trying to gouge people. That's not the intent at all, but I do think we need to be competitive in the market of where we are and generate the funds that we can, because it helps finance what we do every day. So I learned last time we did this, and stupidity on my part, but I didn't know there was such thing as price fixing. And basically that is, if we went to look at something like this and I went to every other department in Hendricks County that did it and I showed them and what they charge, then the state considers that price fixing, and that's against the law. So I would just want to preface this by everything that we've done has been according to what the law permits. Now, even though you got a comparison sheet that showed departments, it didn't list who they are. It gave the rates that they charge. So I kind of wanted to start at the beginning. So when we started this conversation, Ted reached out to Medville and said, hey, we're looking at this. You know, how do we figure out what we should be charging? So with the help of Medville, they sent me a worksheet that I plugged forms or figures into. You should have got that in your packet. And I apologize that I got a new computer and I can't print anything. So some of this I'm kind of stumbling through, but you should have gotten a.
I don't have that colorful thing.
Yeah, this will be eventually what we get to, but.
Okay. Are we missing something?
I'm gonna see if she's got it.
Oh, wait, I do, right here.
The color. No, not the color thing. I was hoping that you'd send out that worksheet that I gave you
did.
that showed the budget.
Yeah, I gave
The
them,
budget figure.
whatever you sent,
Okay.
Brett and I sent them that worksheet that you sent to Medville.
Okay.
What does it look like? Here.
It's,
Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's
No?
that one right
That?
there.
Okay.
So it's kind of hard to read if you don't have cheaters like me, but basically what there it is right there. And I'm sorry, I think some of these may be back in front. So this was the starting document they gave us, and what they said is the first thing we need to capture is what you guys spend every year. So what they asked me to do was plug figures in to as many of those columns as we could. So if you look there, it shows salaries, it shows depreciation, it shows insurance costs, and any of that stuff that I could extrapolate, I plugged into that formula. So once I got all that done, I sent it off to her. We got some information back from her, and she goes, wow, this looks really high. Well, one of the things that we didn't really clarify when we started this was I didn't have any idea, were they talking about our total budget, or were they only talking about a portion of the budget? So the first thing I did, she said that's about 3 times normally what people look at. So what I did was I said, okay, number one, all the figures I put into that was 100% of our budget, okay? 85% of what we do is EMS. So I took that number and I multiplied it times 85, and I took it to that figure. Then from there, I said, okay, if you're looking at the cost per run, it really comes down to a fire truck and an ambulance. So if you take the fact that we've got 3 stations, we've got 3 medics, 3 fire apparatus that would go with them. Then I divided that in third, okay? So that basically takes it down to, this is what one ambulance and one fire truck would cost us in a year.
Right.
Once I did that with those figures, that got us right into the realm of what she said normally they see as a cost analysis for departments. So that's what that sheet is. I wanted you to understand what that is. And again, the money, the figures I plugged in there, I used the budget numbers for next year because I figure we're talking about raising the fees next year. So rather than putting this year's figures, and then next year our budget goes up, I felt like it probably should reflect next year's budget. So those are the numbers that I used on that sheet there, okay? Again, I think she sent, if you look at this spreadsheet here, I think that's the one, it's kind of a hidden cost analysis of what departments around us charge, whether it's Marion County, Johnson County, or whoever, and you can kind of look at where we are in comparison to all those others. So again, I think if I were to look at it collectively, we're not as low as the lowest, but we're pretty close. And we're not near as high as most of the other organizations around us and what they charge. So that kind of gives you some kind of a starting point to look at how do we compare to everybody else, okay? The last sheet I did, and I'm sorry that, I think the one that I put the most time into and hope that this will give you really the nuts and bolts of what you need is, and I'll tell you what, let me give you the colored one. Maybe, do you by chance have that colored rate sheet that was sent out
It's in the pack.
in the board packet? Yeah, that one right there. So if you look at that sheet, what I put first was our current rates. And these are the rates that we currently charge. We charge a BLS resident, a BLS non-resident. There's two types of ALS runs. There's an ALS 1 and ALS 2. Can you tell them?
So
what
that's
difference is?
basically depending on the level of care that we give. So a basic, an ALS run that is simply starting an IV, giving them some fluid. It's less expensive than as if we gave them a whole bunch of cardiac drugs, put them up to the monitor, put them on an IV.
Okay.
So that's what that is. And then we've got the ALS 1 and ALS 2 resident and non-resident. And then we've got the mileage fee at the bottom. So the next thing that Med Bill provided for us was the information of what currently Medicare allows. So basically they have three levels that they reimburse. One's BLS emergent, one's ALS level 1, and one's ALS level 2. Now, the first number is what, I think if I can remember this correctly, that's currently what the Medicare allowable is. I think the second column is they're increasing the allowables next year. So I think the second column would be in addition to what the first column is.
So the ALS 2 is currently 606, but it's going to increase
I think-
by
I think the
348.
second column is the difference between our.
Yep, you're right, I'm sorry. It's a difference between what we currently charge and what, thank you, Ted.
Okay.
And what, so we're already charging $102 more on a BLS emergent than what Medicare allows,
Okay.
okay? Thank you for,
So the second column is what we're charging more than what
Yes.
Medicare allows.
this is what Medicare allows right here
Right, okay.
in this column.
And we're charging
This
that
is
much
what
extra.
Yeah, if you took what they allow and subtract what we're charging, this is the difference.
Got it.
And that
So-
would be the write-off.
Yeah. Basically. So then what MedBill basically said was most departments charge 3 to 4 times what Medicare reimbursable allows for. And what that allows you to do is to kind of recoup some of your fees that you might not get either because of bad debt or, you know, people that we don't get full reimbursement from. So what I did next was I took the Medicare allowable times 2. And this column is how much less we're currently charging than what that would be. No. I think that is showing.
Oh, the difference between what the new proposed billing and
What we're
the
currently charging.
current billing.
Yeah. Okay, so if you take 2 times the allowable and you subtract what we currently charge, that's how much less we're charging. Okay, and then it's basically the same way all of the way over. So there's 2 times the fee, there's 3 times the fee in gray, there's 4 times the fee in light blue, and 5 times in the dark blue. Now, on the far right-hand side, that's where I got into. Can you scroll that over just a hair, Britt? I'm sorry? Oh, okay. So this is where I put what the allowable is gonna be. So right now, they allow $352.79. In 22, they're gonna allow $370.78. That's gonna be the new amount that they will allow, okay? The second number is what's called the sequestrance number. Sequestration. If you look that up, I had to do it because I'm not smart enough to tell you what it is. Basically, that's the federal government's way of taking money from everybody's pockets to help balance their budget. So what they're saying is if we can't get close to where we want to balance the budget, we can go to that. And if we do that, then we're going to reduce it to this amount. So basically, depending on whether or not they do this sequestration or whatever it's called, it could be either 370 or 363. But I wanted to show you both of those.
So then how do they decide if they go to the sequestration?
Yeah, so they increased by 5.1% is their or CMS's inflation rate, and then the sequestration got put in place like I want to say it was 5 or 6 years ago. In 2020, they put a stay on it, so they removed the 2% sequestration, and then in December they'll decide if they want to reapply the 2% reduction, which would then put the inflation to 3.1% as opposed to 5.1. So it's at the will of
So it's at-
CMS, whatever they decide they want to do.
Okay.
So it's basically the feds deciding how deep they want to get in your pockets.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay.
So I don't know if that all makes sense. I'm hoping that it does. I know it was a lot to throw at you, but.
Okay, and then, because there aren't any numbers on the non-resident line,
They don't.
we're looking at.
So I think one of the things that we need to decide is, do we want to continue to have those differentiations in rates? I think at the time we did that, I think there was some concern that I think our biggest concern was, so as an example, I think I mentioned it last month. Let's say we're charging $1,000 for a transport and Wayne's charging $2,000. Well, when we go into Wayne and transport one of their people for mutual aid, we're getting $1,000 less. But when they come over, they're charging our people $1,000 more. So that's kind of why we decided to put the non-resident rate in there, was just to try to level the playing field a little bit. So I didn't want to confuse the numbers even more. I think we can massage them and do that if we want to, and we can figure out what that percentage difference is or whatever.
But if we increase to where we think they should be, because it hasn't been looked at for quite a number of years, that difference is almost gonna go away anyway.
You can differentiate it, you can change it. I mean, we can increase it. I mean, I'm a very strong believer in the township resident and non-resident rate. Taxpayers of this township are paying for this department, okay? Our budget, Britt, I mean, but how much of the EMS fees goes to the total budget of the percentage wise roughly? Okay, so then
It's a little less than 10%.
yeah, it's about 10%. So I mean, obviously, I mean, one thing that we have done is we've been very strong about, you know, because township taxpayers are paying for the park pavilion, they're paying for other things, that we've allowed them a discount or whatever you want to call it, because they're already paying for this thing anyway. So, I mean, that's just my belief. I mean, it's your guys' call, but,
Are there any administrative fees doing the resident versus non-resident, or is it?
It's just basically plugging a figure in for you guys.
we just.
No, it doesn't matter. We don't lose any money by doing a resident versus non-resident minus the difference in the cost.
We tell them how much to charge and that's what they do.
Got it. Okay.
And then it's a matter of when they get they look at where your address is and then they decide on resident or non-resident.
Ted, do you have anything you want to add that I left out?
I don't believe so. But if you looked at the comparisons from the other counties, a lot of the departments that are at the higher rates, they don't charge that non-residence fee because it is pretty even across the board. We're still going to be less expensive on most of on that comparison, even with the rates that we're going to propose with the 3 times. You also should have gotten a file or a letter from Medville that kind of explains everything. It's
Yeah.
actually words, not just numbers.
You guys need to add anything that I've forgotten or looking at?
I mean, no,
This-
nothing specific. I mean, as far as really, one of the questions that always gets asked is increasing the.
I've got blank pages in there. I don't know what that's about.
Priority.
Then maybe mine didn't copy or something.
They're not, they need to hear what you're saying. So
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Go ahead, Brandon, sorry.
Go ahead. Can you start over? I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
One of the things that we discuss whenever people are talking about increasing their rates and doing that, one of the things that always comes up is the taxpayers, right? And those self-pays, people that don't have insurance. We highly recommend if you're gonna do something like that to put in some sort of, write-off. So a lot of the other agencies that you will see on that have that. So let's say you increase your rates by 20%, they'll add a 20% self-pay discount, right? So for those that don't have insurance, it's kind of bringing you back to where you originated. Because with Medicare, Medicaid, and those that you're contracted with, you're not gonna see an increase in revenue, right? Your charges are gonna go up, but the allowables are the allowables.
Right.
Medicare is gonna pay what Medicare is gonna pay, Medicaid is gonna pay. And then, so you gotta look at what's your payer mix, right? So on the sheets that you have, I wanna say, it's 50% for Medicare for this area, and that includes Medicare and managed care plans. I'm gonna reference my notes.
53.
Medicaid is 19, right? So 53 actually, so 53 and 19. So already 60+% of your payer mix is not gonna see an increase, right? You're just gonna increase your contractual write-offs. So the offset that you're gonna see with the increased revenue is gonna be commercials, work comps, auto accidents, liability claims. And then for your self-pays, like I said, you guys already follow suit with the hospital. So if somebody applies for hospital hardship financial assistance, if they go through and get approved, you'll follow suit with that as well. So, keep that in mind.
I think Britt had some information.
Because we're getting more effective at our collections now, we're closer to 15% of our budget for next year.
Okay, so did you have a proposal then for what you want these to, you're doing 3 times?
I think kind of probably, if you look, and again, I don't, hopefully, your attorney can.
It'll be the MA3.
Arrive.
It'll be the.
I think if you look kind of at what the current rate is and maybe where we should be, it looks to me like 3 times is about pretty close to where I think we ought to be.
Okay.
I'm concerned that if we go to 4, it's really getting a little higher than what we should. I mean, now, if we're gonna set the rate now and say, hey, we're not gonna revisit it for another 10 years, and I might say, yeah, let's go with 4, but I think we probably should do a better job at making sure we're probably visiting this more frequently than.
I was gonna say, maybe at least annually, just take a look at it.
Yeah, and we have, I mean, it's not that it hasn't been on our radar,
Right.
it's just, again, I'm kind of like Ted, we get arguments from people, well, why do we even charge? Because taxpayers are paying for it already, and I get that argument, believe me. And you hate to stick it to people that do have insurance and then say, well, if you don't want to get insurance, we won't try to collect from you because you don't have, and I get all the arguments. It's just that, again, I think you have to look at best practices and what is the majority of people doing that do this. So again, I think the people that we're going to see the increases from are probably going to get that bill paid or a good portion of it through insurance anyway.
Right.
And it's probably money that we potentially could be leaving on the table. And the people that aren't going to pay, we're going to end up making a bad debt or writing it off anyway. So I just kind of feel like threes between what they told me, and if you again look at the other rates, I kind of feel like 3 times kind of fall kind of in that area. So
All right, so Don, is this something you want the board to just kind of take a look at, digest, come back to you guys with any questions?
Next month, when the 3 of you
can
are
I
here.
ask you to do one thing?
Yes.
Consider what Don said about the resident, non-resident. If that is something you want to continue, then what I'd like to do is I'd like for Ted and I to massage those numbers and come up with those rates. We'll send those back out to you so you have them before the next meeting.
Okay.
So that if that is the case, we're not arbitrarily saying, well, just go in there and throw in what you want. Let's go ahead and get all those numbers hammered out and get them done.
What,
So
I'm sorry, I forgot your name. What was your name again? Brandon, what is generally best practice with resident versus non-resident? Is that something that most of your clients do? Are they getting away from it?
I would say honestly, historically, they've probably been moving away from it, just because there's so much crossing boundaries and, like lines, and then it causes a lot of conflict. And like they say, if somebody gets a $2,300 bill and then you get a $1,000 bill, and then it becomes, an argument of who is where, it's generally easier to have one. But I mean.
Well, but let me preface that with my part of that argument is there are departments around us that don't make EMS a priority.
Yeah.
So consequently, we tend to make more runs to bigger departments than us because we have more people that do that job. So I don't feel like our department or the people in this township should have to suffer because another department that's bigger than us doesn't put the priority, I don't want to say where it should be, but they have a different priority than we do. 85% of what we do is EMS. It's a big part of what we do. So when other departments that are bigger than us have 2 ambulances in service every day and they're covering twice the area and we've got 4, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to make more runs into those areas. And I think that might be the only argument that I would think would counterbalance that is I don't feel like it's fair for us. And I'm not a proponent of saying we're not going outside our boundaries. We can't do that. We don't have the people that we need to do what we do every day without having mutual aid. And I think we need to continue it. But I think this is a way to counterbalance that. And again, the argument that I mentioned earlier, if our rates aren't as high as our neighbors and our people are paying more when they come in, but their people are paying less when they come over here, then, you kind of have to balance that out. So
That's one of the reasons why we raised it, because back then we were having a lot, well, you see your reports. I mean, how much is given locally and how much is received. I mean, we give a lot to other areas. And that's what we were encountering, and therefore that's why we had the resident, non-resident rate so that we could capture some.
Oh, sorry,
On
Joe.
the other end of that, not only do you have your big departments that you're subsidizing, you have some neighbors that are not prioritizing their organization of fire and EMS, and you're disproportionately answering EMS runs in other portions of the county. And so you're also subsidizing those that are not making it a priority. So if you're subsidizing the big units to the east, then you're perhaps subsidizing the little units to the west.
Mhm.
And so all this does is just say, fine, we'll keep coming, we'll keep answering dispatch, but we need to stop draining out the EMS resources away from your base.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is, again, if you look at our run statistics for this year, we're looking at a 15% increase in run load. No, I'm sorry, 25% increase in run load in a 1-year period. In a time prior to 2 years ago, on average, we see 2 to 3% increase, and we're seeing a 25% jump in 1 year. And, Don, when I walked in the door yesterday, hey, I got my account balances from Britain, we're real tight. Well, yeah, I know, Ted's medical expenses and his stuff is going through the roof, but we're doing 25% more runs than what we were too. So there is a cost associated with the business that we do. And again, you can look at our line items and see the effect of that when you look and see that our supply line item and our medication line items pretty much shot already, and we've got 2 or 3 more months left to go. So
And with the growth of the population within the township too, it's going up too.
So again, all I'd ask is that you guys decide amongst yourself, or the two of you decide before you close this, do we want to or not want to do the resident, non-resident, or if you want to get Shane's input, that's fine. But I'd like to have enough time between now, maybe within the next couple of weeks, to where I could get you back those rate differences if we're gonna go that direction, so you guys have those in your hands before you come to the meeting.
Or if nothing else, he can give you both. I mean, that way you have it.
Well, we don't need him to do double work. Would it be fair to say by the end of this week, we could at least let Don know, we could have conversations with Don one-off and?
Yep.
Okay, at least then you
We can
guys
do
will have a
that, sure.
direction.
Yeah.
Because I do think it would be fair to get Shane's input considering his profession. That's obviously something that's
I
close to him, so I would like to hear
And
his
then you'll
opinion.
also have to have some guidelines to give them as far as write-off policies, that kind of thing. If we're gonna make this kind of change, then we've got to
A
be
lot
able
of
to
them are
instruct
already
them.
in place, it'll just be a couple minor tweaks.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got write-offs, we already do.
You'll get that next
Well,
one.
yeah,
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know.
But I think he makes a good point. I think if we do a percentage increase, then we probably should reflect that increase in our write-off policy too, to where that balances that increase out. So I agree, Steve. That's something we need to reflect in what we decide to do.
And is it time for us to address the mutual aid given versus received, or are you guys?
I think that's a slippery slope.
I know it is.
Um,
I know we've talked about it since before we were even on the
Yeah.
board, because the
Yeah.
numbers ours are so much higher than
Well,
everyone else.
I think I've said it before and I'll say it again, and Ted and I talked about it at lunch yesterday. I'm sorry, but it's geographics.
Mhm.
We're in the middle of everything.
Right,
If we were on the edge, or we were north or south or wherever, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. But unfortunately, we're where we are. And it's a business, I understand that, but we're in this business to help people when they need help. So I get a little leery when we start talking about, we're not gonna do this because,
right.
Yeah, you can say that, we don't wanna cross boundaries or
I wasn't
whatever.
saying not
No, I'm
doing
just
it, just saying.
I think the flip side of that is if we were all out on, I'll give you a perfect example. Today, Ted and I were walking through the park on their opening day. We got 2 runs at the same time. One of those runs was a fire run. We had 1 Avon unit on that run. We had 3 or 4 Wayne, 2 or 3 Plainfield, and like 1 Brownsburg, because we had 2 runs going at the same time. So it's easy to say that when you're on this side saying, well, I'm giving you all that help, but what about that run I had today when I only had 1 of my units and I needed to have 5 or 6 and they weren't available? So I'm just not really sure how we quantify that, it's, and again, unfortunately, it's geographics. I don't know that short of.
It just becomes a problem when we're running out of resources, right? When you guys have 3 months left and the funds are gone and the resources are gone. It's just a different way to look at it.
One of the things, and you can fault me for that, for not projecting what I should have in the budget, but we can't, I didn't know last year that we were gonna do 25.
Who-
All I'm asking.
Who would? Who would?
All I'm asking the board to remember is, yeah, that we've done that many more runs, but how much more money are we making off of those 25% of runs? So
Right.
that's what we need to look at when it comes to the fact that we have a budget shortage. Not so much I'm over budget. Okay, let's put that in perspective and look at how many more runs we did. And then let's see whether there's really a problem or whether we just need to be applying some of that extra money that we did make towards filling that gap where we didn't have the budget money. So.
Well, and like you said, we're in the business of helping people. We're not going to, oh, sorry, we're out of budget. We're done helping people for the year. That's not what we're gonna do, so. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So if that's fair, then by Friday, we will have talked with Don, we'll get Shane's input and we'll at
And I
least
wanna
have
thank
some
our folks from
direction.
Medville for making the time to come and answer questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes,
I've learned what a sequestration is. We learn something new every day.
they have done an awesome job on the collections too. Our collections have gone way, way up.
Absolutely. Okay, do we have any public comment or wishes to be heard?
Just one thing, next month we are going to have a lot of things that'll be before you. It's a lot of different resolutions, et cetera, but plan on, I mean, there'll be a lot of stuff I'll be giving you in the packet, but the board meeting won't be long, but you'll have a lot of things that you'll be dealing with end of year stuff.
All right, if there's no wishes to be heard, I just need a motion to adjourn at 4:20 PM.
So moved.
I will second. All those in favor, I guess. Aye. All right, thank you guys. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so I'm gonna keep that separate.